Morning, folks. Welcome to the Community Church of Boston. We call ourselves a peace and justice congregation since 1920. 103 years of good trouble, to quote the late John Lewis. And I'm thinking about John Lewis because I just did an event. Welcome to the Community Church of Boston. Mute the YouTube. Peace and justice congregation. Because just last week I was in Rockland, Maine, and we were doing a first of a concert series. It's called the Good Trouble Project, and it's to benefit the John Lewis Foundation. And it was a remarkable thing that we had that event, and there's more events upcoming. I want to thank Amar Ahmad for doing a beautiful job of Richard Wolff, who I just can't say enough about Professor Richard Wolff last Sunday, who is just so generous with his time and so clear about something that people don't think that they should understand, which is economics. And it was just a beautiful message. And he went overtime answering lots of questions. And we're going to have some clips of Richard's talk up on our YouTube channel in segments of maybe 5 or 10 minutes each, and they immediately get tens of thousands of views. And so thank you, Richard Wolff and David Rovics, who joined us from Hawaii with the music, and all of those people. So here at Community Church, we have had times where we read something at the beginning. We haven't done a regular reading of the sort of the purpose of the church, and we don't have programs anymore. Since COVID, we stopped publishing bulletins because we have a reduced audience, physical audience here. But it's fine because all of you are joining us on Zoom and YouTube. And so I would just want to read it just to be reminded of what it is. And this is from something that we found in our archives. It was perfect condition from 1922. And it is basically the declaration of the establishment of Community Church of Boston as a corporation under Chapter 180 of the Massachusetts laws. Anyway, this is what it says. We the Community Church of Boston, names the 7 founders and founding mothers and fathers. There's 3 women and 4 men, have associated themselves with the intention of forming a corporation under the name of the Community Church of Boston for the purpose of the following. The Community Church shall be a free fellowship of men and women dedicated to the fulfillment of social idealism through common service for the common good. It seeks to cultivate the open mind and the aspiring spirit and the passion for justice and the application of the cooperative principle to all forms of social and economic life. So that's our purpose since 1921, and it still rings true today, as far as I'm concerned. I hope you agree. Secondly, good morning. I would like to send a shout out to my professional colleagues, and that is the court interpreters of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We are on strike right now. We have not had a raise in 16 years, and in 2009, our travel time was docked by 75%, and we've lived with that for a decade and a half, and it's time to speak out. And we've been timid, and finally a couple of just really strong voices said, "This is bullshit." That's what they said. And so we're having, it's sort of not an official strike, but it's a walkout and a statement, sort of to echo and make loud the words of Frederick Douglass, who says, "Power does not concede to anything without a demand." And so there's our demand. And it looks like we're already having success. We're being offered a pretty substantial raise with a cost of living increase. Anyway, this is for you. court interpreters of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. For the people who stand up and march for their right, solidarity, solidarity. For the ones who shine lights through the perilous night, solidarity, solidarity. For the souls who risk everything, strong in their stance, so their children can have a fair chance. Power in unity, fighting for what can be, solidarity, solidarity. For the workers who strike for a real living wage, solidarity, solidarity. In a time where the rich rule this new gilded age, solidarity, solidarity. Where so many have nothing, and if you have it all, what your grandparents fought for recalled. Hear their proud voices ring in your memory, dreams of solidarity, solidarity. For the crowds that have gathered and filled the town square, solidarity, solidarity. With hope in their hearts and their hands in the air, solidarity, solidarity. They sing down all dictators, calling their bluffs. When you've had enough, you've had enough. Every fear will recede in this great human sea of solidarity, solidarity, solidarity. Solidarity. Well, hello. If you didn't know yet, my name is Dean, and I'm called the interim administrator, and I call myself fake minister of Community Church of Boston, because we are a church and we've been one for 103 years. And so I'm doing what I can. Mostly it comes out of just being a longtime member of the church and really passionate about who we are, what our mission is, and who our members are, and what our building is, which is a 5-story storefront commercial looking building in Copley Square that looks out on the beautiful, huge, impressive Trinity Church, and over there on the beautiful, huge, impressive Old South Church. And we're here and we're making good trouble in this 5-story commercial building with an auditorium that is presently filled with lots of what in the Yiddish they call tchotchkes. And I want to talk about that a little bit this morning. So we start by lighting a candle. I can't find, oh, there it is. And I've been playing with fire all weekend from this cold. We have a beautiful fireplace. If I stood in the rain night, my only light a candle a million miles away, would you lay down your fire as I raise mine? Would you not kill again? And oh, when you're near me, oh my love, oh my joy, there's nothing ever to weary me, oh my darling one. And this morning's candle is lit for someone who gave me these. 2 weeks ago, we had a speaker named Jim Ifland, And Amar introduced Jim, and Jim Iflin teaches a course on these guys. This is Don Quixote and Sancho Panza. And Amar butchered Don Quixote, and I loved it because this was my opportunity to educate Amar. I mean, who would expect Amar to know who is Don Quixote? He didn't study that, and I did a little tiny bit, and the people who take Jim Iflin's course really know a lot about it. Anyway, this is a cuckoo old man who fancies himself a knight and finds some rusty armor and goes with his trusted sidekick, Sancho Panza, and they go out to take on injustice and take on windmills and take on whatever else gets in their way, and all for the honor of his imaginary sweetheart, Dulcinea de Toboso. Anyway, I also bring these wooden statues because my Aunt Mary, when she moved from her apartment from her house that she'd had for like 60 years to an assisted living, said to all of us, cousins, nephews, uncles, aunts, these are the things I want to get rid of. And one of the things she wanted to get rid of was my grandmother's sewing machine. And the other thing she wanted to get rid of, and there's a list of things, but was her set of Don Quixote wooden carved statues. And I said, just out of the blue, I would like those Don Quixote wooden carved statues, and I would like that 1921 Singer sewing machine. And she managed to wrap things up and send them to me, and I have half a dozen of these. She passed away this past Wednesday, and I just light that candle to remember a beautiful aunt. And I wish I could show you a picture. She was the laughingest creature on the planet, and there's only one who laughs more raucously than her, and that's my aunt, my mother. And there's a picture of my mother and her, and they're just laughing uproariously. And I'll try to find that photo before the day is out and show it to you. But Aunt Mary, this is for you. And thank you for Don Quixote statues, so I could educate Amar on Don Quixote. I'd love to take that Jim Iflin course. There was a wonderful program about Roque Dalton, the revolutionary poet from El Salvador, 2 weeks ago. So that's the first tchotchkes. We've been blessed since the holidays to have a table full of merchandise from Palestine, and it all comes from a store that's called the Olive Branch Fair Trade. It's on Martha's Vineyard. And Linda Cohen is the proprietor, and she has just so generously given us these items to display. And she's coming maybe for them or maybe not. I can't make up my mind whether we keep them forever and turn ourselves into a tchotchke store. But there's just beautiful paintings from a young Gaza painter whose name escapes me now. And there's beautiful earrings made out of Bedouin coins. There's beautiful soap from the West Bank and keffiyehs. And it's just a great, wonderful thing to have. Add to that the fact that I'm the king of merch, and I bring all kinds of stuff from El Salvador. It's all back in my house now. It was all over the auditorium during holiday, and we had our annual Monday, Wednesday, Friday bazaar, as well as a Zoom bazaar at noon, where people could zoom in, and I could give them a walk through the items, and they would say, "I'll take one of those. I'll take one of those. Put it on my MasterCard. Put it on my Visa." PayPal, Venmo. Anyway, that was fun, and we have this display of Palestinian crafts. We also have. I just got back from El Salvador, and I have this passion for thrift stores and embroidery by Hilda Caballero. I go to thrift stores, I buy solid color shirts, especially jean jackets, and Hilda and her two daughters do the embroidery. Here's an example. Look at the back. Anyway, I just brought 50 of these back, and I'm not going to push this too hard. In fact, that's who Jesus threw out of the temple, right? Crass commercialism, but all for a good purpose. We also happen to have tons of books from the estate of Bob Datilio, and we also happen to have. I'll finish on this. A beautiful display of paintings that we can't seem to want to take down. It was a very successful exhibition of the paintings of Diane Esmond, thanks to her son, Victor Wallace, and his partner, Inez Hedges. We got this display of incredible paintings of the Impressionist painter, Diane Esmond, and there's quite a story behind her life. And we sold, all to the benefit of some of our very ambitious building upkeep projects. We sold $10,000 worth of paintings. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Inez, for making this possible. These paintings are still up, and eventually we will get them down, but we're just kind of not in a hurry. They're just so beautiful. Finally, I said finally about the last thing, didn't I? I wonder if by any chance, you were with us December 18th when we gave our annual Sacco and Vanzetti Award to the Holy Land Foundation. That was, to me, and hopefully to you who were with us, one of the most moving events that I can remember. And among the speakers was Nida Abu Bakr, the daughter of Shukri Abu Bakr. Nida, are you with us on the Zoom by any chance? She was thinking of maybe joining us, but I'll tell you that just by way of announcement that she will definitely join us on February 22nd. It's a Wednesday, and we are showing a Al Jazeera documentary about the Holy Land Foundation 5. And just to find out more, and just this journey of learning about this case is something that it really has just moved me to the core. And that's why I tell you about these chachkas. These are Muslim prayer beads. I forget the name. What are they called? They're called masbaha. They're called masbahas. And these are made by Shukri Abu Bakr, who is sitting in a prison in Beaumont, Texas. They're made of bread. These are pieces of bread, shaped, wetted, and then shaped the dough into beads that some look like little pebbles, and some look like very round little beads. But this is no ordinary costume jewelry. This is the statement of beauty from a political prisoner who is unjustly serving 65 years in jail. And his daughter Nida has taken this and turned it into an item for sale. You can find some of the selection of beautiful colors at her Instagram page, which is called @bread&beads. And there's quite a marvelous selection of beads denoting different things like months of the year, denoting different human qualities like compassion and justice, and some of them are in Arabic names that I don't understand and want to learn about. So if you're interested in some of these, one of these masbahas, did I say that right? Yeah, I think so. come to one of our open houses on Wednesday at noon, and we can talk about them. And I'm interested in helping Nida make this a venture, because it has such a deep story behind it that is about a man who we want to do everything we can to free. And it's a long, complicated story. If you want to hear the synopsis of it, go to our YouTube channel and look up the Holy Land Foundation. And Miko Peled was here speaking, and he gave a 40-minute passionate description of what's happened to these 5 men. And also we had Sami Al-Arian, who also received the award, a very similar sort of parallel case. I'm done with tchotchkes, except for one more thing. I keep saying finally. We have Miko's books. The one about the Holy Land Foundation 5 is called Injustice. And we have one that he wrote 10 years ago, and this is a new edition of it. It's called The General's Son. And we have copies of these for sale at the church, so join us. And finally, really finally, a little pig. We have two young people in the audience today, and I want to give one of them these little piglets, and the other one, I'm going to find another one that's in the office for the other one. Okay, so I'm going to sing a song, and then we're going to get on with the program with attorney Stephen Downs. We're so glad to welcome him here, and the different displays, and hear more about the Coalition for Civil Freedoms. This song is another one like the first one, written by Tom Pacheco. And this song I send out specifically to Tom. He's not doing too well. He's in hospital, and with just good thoughts and prayers for healing for the author of this song, Tom Pacheco, and also for my friend Jim, who is in the same condition out in Los Angeles. I was with him early January, and this song is in the form of a prayer. And Tom wrote this for his sister. I send this out to my 2 brothers. One of them is the author of the song, Tom Pacheco, and Jim Thomas. Got to start over. Heavenly Mother, Spirit of all I can see, watch over my brothers the way you have watched over me. Give them protection from any danger they meet. And though they may stumble, let them always land on their feet. They've been unlucky, they've been betrayed. This time, please give them a good hand to play, and make every cloud they cannot outrun be just the shadow of a seagull in the sun. And make every cloud they cannot outrun be just the shadow of a seagull in the sun. I have been worried, knowing they're out there alone. searching for something inside that is deeper than bone. How can somebody suffer so much for so long before they believe there's no reason at all to go on? Show them their value to their own eyes. Give them the wings that will help them to fly, and make every cloud they cannot outrun be just the shadow of a seagull in the sun. They have taken far too many falls. Work so long and hard just to lose it all. Every crop they planted would not yield. This time let a treasure fill their field. Guide them through valleys, clear a few trees from their path. Spare them the merciless wind and the cold winter's wrath. Lead them to some place of beauty where healing can start. And let the moon rise off the river and into their heart. Let them find purpose, let them find peace. From every prison may they be released, and make every cloud they cannot outrun be just the shadow of a seagull. Let them find mercy, let them find peace. From every prison may they be released, and make every cloud they cannot outrun be just the shadow of a seagull in the sun. Thank you. And in a way, that song is a prayer for all of those people we're going to hear more about in today's program. Just send it out to them as well. We met Steve Downs just in December when he was here for the Holy Land Foundation event. And we thought this would be just the logical follow-up to find out the bigger picture about what happened after 9/11 and what happened specifically to immigrants scapegoated for their beliefs or the color of their skin in a time of national hysteria. And this was our realization that the Coalition for Civil Freedoms is dedicated to exactly that really difficult and challenging work, and just very inspired by them. And to have Steve with us today. Will you folks welcome to our humble pulpit, podium, stage, whatever you want to call it, Steve Downs. Thanks, Steve, for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Dean. This is always a pleasure to be here. This is one of the most unusual churches I've ever been involved with, and I just enjoy so much being here. We get, oh, it's got to be really close. Yeah. All right. Dang. All right.
Too much in your face?
Too much in my face. Can you back it off? Yeah.
Back off.
Yeah, that looks better. Got it. So today I want to talk to you about families. Not necessarily the families we inherit, but the ones we adopt. It's been my privilege for the last 15 years to be adopted by a number of Muslim families, and the experience has changed my life. After 9/11, the FBI retaliated against the American Muslim community, even though they had nothing to do with 9/11. Hundreds of Muslims were convicted on false charges and sentenced to long prison terms, including life, even where no life or property was harmed in any way, and the criminal intent originated entirely in the predatory mind of the government. Family and friends of those convicted gathered around to offer support and protest these injustices. Many eventually joined the Coalition for Civil Freedoms. We have a banner over there in back, of which I am presently the chair of the board and interim executive director. And last November, you honored 6 of CCF's wrongfully convicted prisoners with a Sacco Vanzetti Prize, the Holy Land 5 and Dr. Samuel Arian. Today, I want to talk about how I joined the CCF family of wrongfully convicted Muslims, and then introduce you to 3 other family members who will tell you about their experiences. I spent most of my professional career as chief attorney with the New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct, investigating disciplining bad judges. And I retired in 2003. In 2006, I volunteered to be part of the legal defense team for a local imam in Albany, New York, who was accused of terrorism. My client, Yassine Araf, not perhaps the most attractive portrait, he often smiles, but he was convicted of a fake FBI sting that deliberately did not provide Yassine with information sufficient for him to understand that the FBI sting was illegal. By deliberately failing to provide this information, I realized that the US government had intentionally framed an innocent man. Intentionally framed an innocent man. I was astonished. In all my years as in the law, I had never encountered a deliberate frame-up of an innocent person. And as a lawyer, it offended me to my soul, to the very soul of it, because that's what the law is about. We don't know why Yassine was framed, but we do know that in the 1960s and 1970s, the FBI targeted Black Panther leaders and other dissenting groups with similar harassment and false charges. This program, known as COINTELPRO, was eventually declared illegal by Congress in 1974, and the FBI supposedly established procedures to prevent such illegal harassment from happening in the future. Then, after 9/11, the FBI quietly removed these restrictions and went back to a new version of COINTELPRO, targeting the Muslim community. Yassine was apparently a victim of this new Islamic scapegoating. I spent a lot of time with Yassine in jail prior to the trial, and we became friends. He had arrived in America a few years earlier as a refugee from Kurdistan, Iraq, with his wife and 4 young children, and he spoke only limited English. But he was a truly brilliant man and one of the best natural storytellers that I've ever encountered. In the 6 months between his conviction and his sentencing, I helped Yassine write a 400-page memoir edited by Gene Finley entitled Son of Mountains, about his life growing up in Kurdistan and his 4 children. So his 4 children would know where the family had come from. I have a copy here. Son of Mountains. The day after Yassine was sentenced to 15 years in prison, I went to see him in jail. I felt terrible that we'd lost the case. Yassine looked up at me and he said, "I want to fire you as my attorney." My heart sank. Then he said, "I want to hire you as my brother. I have no family in the United States right now, and I think family will do me more good than lawyers." Okay, I could relate to that. So I agreed to be his brother and his uncle to his kids without having much idea what this involved. A local group called the Muslim Solidarity Committee, which you can see referenced here, had been already formed to support the families of Yassine and his co-defendant, Mohammed Hussein, to ensure that the 10 impacted children, 4 from Yassine and 6 from Mohammed, would grow up to live as normal lives as possible. Mohammed's wife was a strong woman with some older children for adult support. A large donation of money from the whole Albany community soon made her family financially independent. But Yassine's wife, Zuhur, refused all attempts to make her life better. The FBI had destroyed her trust in America. She just wanted to go back to Kurdistan with her children as soon as possible. Yassine preferred that the children become US citizens because in his mind, it offered the children better education and more options. They had been born in Syria, which did not give citizenship to refugee children. And so the kids were not citizens of any country in the world. and they had no passport or traveling papers to go anywhere. So an impasse developed. Zuhur refused to support herself by working or welfare, perhaps as a way to force us to send her home. The more we tried to make her life in the US easier, the more she resisted until we finally seemed to be in constant conflict with her. The mosque also tried ways to help Zuhur and met with the same stubborn resistance. But we quickly fell in love with the kids. They were bright, energetic, and fun. And on those occasions when we were able to take them on 5-day visits to the Midwest to see Yassine in prison, we bonded. We managed about one trip a year for 15 years and watched the kids grow into beautiful adults. But often it was over Zuhur's opposition. On one occasion, Zuhur called the police to arrest us for kidnapping when we started to take the children on a scheduled 5-day trip to visit Yassine in prison. On another occasion, when I visited her, she began yelling out in the streets at me so long and so loud that I asked one of the children if this behavior occurred very often. He looked at me and said, "Only when you come." I decided I wasn't really helping very much, and I backed off. And after that, I really was not able to do much to help the family. But eventually, we began to see Zuhur's resistance in a different light. She was perhaps being far more honest than we were. We were saying, hey, we can fix your life in America, so things will be tolerable until Yassine is released. And she was saying, oh, forget it. My husband was unjustly convicted. The FBI is targeting my family. My kids are becoming Americanized. I'm losing complete control of the situation. I just want to go home. She felt she was in prison just like Yassine, and our putting Band-Aids on her situation was not going to make any difference. We were seeing the raw, honest pain and anger at injustice that cannot be consoled. And we learned not to challenge it or minimize it. Sometimes when families are in such crisis, it's better to give them space and be there only when they want you. But at the same time, I never felt that I was able to fulfill my promise to Yassine to look after his family. And then we began to find cases like Yassine's all over the place, hundreds of them. The four of us, Kathy Manley, Jean Finley, Lynn Jackson, and I formed a group called Project Salam to study the connections between these other cases. Our research was inspired by a statement made by a prosecutor in Yassine's case at a press conference. The prosecutor acknowledged that he had no evidence that Yassine was a terrorist, but he claimed without basis that Yassine had the ideology, whatever that meant. And he added that in order to preempt anything from happening, they had taken this predatory sting. That statement implied that the FBI had a program similar to COINTELPRO that targeted Muslim ideology with fake stings. We began to call these cases preemptive prosecutions, prosecuting Muslims before a crime was committed. We studied hundreds of such cases in which the US government claimed to have successfully prosecuted terrorist crimes and concluded that 94% of them involved preemptive prosecutions and were essentially bogus convictions. We published a report on this study entitled Inventing Terrorists. And I have a couple of copies in the back if anybody's interested in getting a copy of that. Soon after Yassine was sentenced, we were invited by Ayesha Hoda, standing here in the back, to participate in a public presentation about the FBI's entrapment of 4 innocent Muslims in what has become now known as the Newburgh 4 case. After our scheduled presentations, hands began going up all over the room from other families wanting to speak out about their loved ones who had also been entrapped by the FBI. After all these people had spoken, a member of the Newburgh 4 family, Alicia McWilliams, brought all the speakers up onto the stage, and wrapping her arms around them in a big embrace, she said, "Now we are all family." And with this declaration, she created a family of preemptively prosecuted souls, a movement to end the FBI harassment. Alicia's declaration was pivotal for me because if we are all one family, we could no longer advocate only for our own loved ones. We had to advocate for everybody. So everybody else was our new adopted preemptive family as well. To define our new preemptive family and build a movement, we constructed a portable wall of names, and you can see them around here in the rooms. These are all various names. Samuel Arian is on here. The Holy Land Five are on there. Yassine is on there. The Newburgh Four are on there. But these names, I have to say, these panels are way out of date by at least a decade. I think it would probably take 4 or 5 more panels to even begin to include all of the people now that we are following for these bogus charges. People used to come up, we carried them in a ski bag, somewhere around here, through the subways and referred to it as our missile launcher when this thing was all packed up. People used to come up to the wall after a presentation and put their hand on a name and start to cry. Soon I was getting letters from prisoners I'd never heard of saying things like, "My appeals are exhausted. Put me on your wall. I don't want to be forgotten." The 4 of us at Project Salam began going around the country telling our story about FBI entrapments. The wall soon became out of date, and because so many new names had to be added. In upstate New York, a dairy farmer, Max Grabischar, heard about preemptive prosecutions and began to paint protest banners for different groups of prosecuted Muslims late in night in the barn when his cows were asleep. So this is an example of the one he painted for Yassine. We have dozens of other ones like this. I think he's a frustrated mural painter, but he zeroed right in on each one of these groups had to have a banner. We used these props for a decade to tour the country, bringing attention to the plight of the prisoners and their families, searching for ways to get their loved ones released. Eventually, Dr. Samuel Arian, who himself was a political prisoner held under house arrest for some 5 years on bogus charges, brought some of these groups together to form CCF. Project Salam was one of the founding members, as was described to you back in December of last year when you presented him with the Sacco Vanzetti award to Dr. Alarian. CCF developed a 4-campaign program: education for the public about Islamophobia and preemptive prosecutions to prevent new Muslims from being entrapped. We have an outreach to the families, the prisoners and families, including a gift program to remind prisoners that they have not been forgotten, and an annual family conference to gather impacted family members to heal and become empowered, and a legislative program to pass a bill, Entrapment and Governmental Overreach Relief Act, that the EGO bill, that would end preemptive prosecutions at the governmental level. And it's described more in this Inventing Terrorists, so if anybody's interested. And finally, we do legal representations to try to get our preemptively prosecuted prisoners out of jail, including, we hope in part on the EGO bill, if that is ever passed, it might get a whole lot of people out of jail. Right now, we're focusing mostly on compassionate releases. The FBI coerced many Muslims into becoming informants by threatening prosecutions for minor violations. And because so many Muslims were potentially informants, our impacted family members often had nobody with whom they could discuss their pain at being attacked by the government. They were isolated and even shunned, even in their own communities. It was only when CCF was able to bring impacted family members together for annual family conferences that many of them could speak freely and intimately with each other about their difficulties, and began the process of healing and becoming empowered. For many, this was the second family they needed: intimate, caring, understanding, empowering. At our last family conference, for example, one Somali woman seemed defeated on the first day. Her appeals for her incarcerated son had been denied. Her money was exhausted. Everywhere she turned, she met only walls and denials. But then she heard stories of how others were fighting back, and she returned the next day with a new spirit, saying, "I thought about what you said all night, and I said to myself, if you can change, I can change. I don't have to be defeated and alone." And everybody began cheering her. All the families said she got it. She understood. You're not bound by your worst fears, your lowest expectations, society prejudices. You can change yourself. And in the process, you can change your outcome in the world. So this is exactly the empowerment that we hope to see in those who have been otherwise crushed by the system. Joining the family of preemptively prosecuted opened a whole new world for me. Through the eyes of people that I came to love and admire, I felt the pain and frustration of Muslims and immigrants who hoped to find a safe new home in America, and instead found scapegoating, lies, and betrayal by the government. But I also enjoyed the passion and energy of activists trying to change an unjust system, and the hospitality and friendship of the Islamic community who welcomed me unconditionally and honored me with the intimacy of a family member. It has been one of the most memorable journeys of my life. I stand in amazement at the enormity of the program that the FBI has created that destroy hundreds of innocent, mostly Muslim families. As a lawyer, I'm humiliated that the law could be twisted so easily to impose such a great cost on so many decent people based on hostility toward a religion. But I also stand in awe at the resilience of those targeted and their determination to live up to America's ideals, even if America has lost sight of them. Families have continuity, and Yassin's family is no different. In the years before Yassin completed his sentence and was deported to Kurdistan, Kathy Manley brought a series of lawsuits as each of Yassin's children turned 18, and that forced the federal government to grant the children citizenship. So they are now officially all Americans. Yassin's oldest daughter is teaching English as a second language to refugee children in Albany High School. The oldest son just graduated from Harvard Law School. Got married and is working at a big firm in Manhattan. But he also showed his true colors by spending his law school summer internship as a public defender in Alaska. The kid's adventurous. He's really fun. The other two kids are still in college. They use my house as a mail drop, go off on canoe trips with my kids, come to Thanksgiving dinners, help me with my computer problems, and in general are beloved members of my family. It turns out, oddly enough, that they did not need my help as an uncle growing up to become remarkable, resilient, optimistic adults that inspire others. 3 weeks ago, Kathy Manley, Lynn Jackson, and I, and 3 other friends flew out to Kurdistan, the Kurdistan region of Iraq, for a family visit with Yassin and his wife, Zohor, near the Soleimani, near their town in Soleimani, Iraq, where they've lived since he was deported in 2019. On the way, we stopped off in Istanbul and had dinner with Samuel Arian, my mentor who organized CCF and was then deported to Turkey. So he sends his regards to all of you. Seeing Yassin again was just an overwhelming experience, in part because I'd never seen him as a free man. So the first time I'd seen him that way. He had survived prison well, but he'd lost all of his time with his children when they were growing up, and the opportunity to be a real parent for his maturing children. It was something he still regrets now, but he's now trying to fill his dream of becoming a poet and a literary figure in Kurdistan. He has 3 books that are about to be published. He has an enormous family out there. And I have to say, he spent the entire 10 days going around from one meal to another, first with his family eating enormous amounts of shish kebab, and then touring a lot of the very important people in the province who wanted to find out from the Americans what they thought of Yassin. I mean, after all, they all love Americans over there, but for some reason, the Americans had convicted him of terrorism, and everybody was a little bit nervous about just how he should be treated. So we tried to be as positive as we could about it and explain that we all strongly believed in his innocence. Zohor could not have been nicer to us. All the bitterness and anger seemed to have gone. At one point, I turned to her and I said, Zohor, I want to apologize to you for all the arguments that we had and the harsh words we exchanged. I know I often made you angry, but I never wanted to hurt you. And I'm sorry. And Zohor looked at me and replied, I don't remember that we ever had exchanged bad words. I don't remember that anything bad happened. You were just trying to help. And I said, you know, Zohor, I think you got a better memory than I do. I like that memory. I'm gonna substitute that. That's gonna be my memory now. But that's the way it is, right? This is the way families act with each other. The underlying relationship is too important to allow it to get hung up in small bitternesses and spats. That's what family is all about. So adopted families like this can take you places that you never dreamed of going and teach you lessons that you cannot learn anywhere else. And that's why I call this presentation, what family do you belong to? Or perhaps I should say, what family have you adopted? By coincidence, on the day that I returned from Iraq, I received a letter from one of the Newburgh 4 defendants, David Williams, presently serving a 25-year sentence. I'm representing him on a motion to obtain an early release because of the unfairness of his conviction, which even the judge acknowledged. While we're waiting for the judge's decision, David and I have exchanged a lot of letters, and we've become close friends. David wrote this as a message to all of you at this event. I mentioned that I was coming to this event, and he sent back this little message, and it was too long to read, but he just put this last part in, and I just thought I'd read it to you. My friend Steve has pushed me to write and speak about who I really am, not who I was painted to be. I am grateful for so many strangers who have not only become my friends, but family. This has allowed me to realize that family isn't bonded by love. Thank you, Ayesha Hoda and Hani Massoud, for caring enough to be our voice. You have absolutely no idea how much it warmed my heart to know that our struggle has become your fight. So with that should be the perfect segue into having them come up and talk about their experience. However, I think we are going to go to Netta first in California.
Is Nida here? Nida's not on the show.
This is not, no, this is, yeah.
Hi.
Hi, there you are. Hi, Netta. Rather than my botching your introduction, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, no, of course.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's nice to see you, Steve. I really just wish I was there with you guys in person. I have major FOMO. But yeah, my name is Neda. I'm the Prisoner and Family Support Coordinator for the Coalition for Civil Freedoms. I work with the prisoners and the family members that Steve was describing. I am very happy to be here. I was at the church in December, and I'm just very happy to be back and with you all. I wanted to talk a little bit about the work that I do, and I guess just get more in depth into like the impacts that these cases have on the family members. I think Steve gave us a very good overview as far as like how these cases impact the families and what that looks like. And I guess I just wanted to take some time to talk more broadly about the way that this looks like for other families, because this is unfortunately, Yassine's case is just one of hundreds, and actually thousands of cases that have happened over the past 2 decades. So yeah, I wrote an essay in one of our reports. I know Steve mentioned our first report that we published. The second one that we published a year ago, almost 2 years ago now, almost, but yeah, called The Terror Trap. I authored a chapter called The Impacts of the War on Terror on the Families of Political Prisoners. Steve is holding it up right now, I think. Yes. Thank you, Steve. And in that chapter, I kind of tried to divulge into the 4 different aspects that, the family's lives are impacted. And, hopefully you guys can go and read it so that you can see, in more detail for yourselves. But I'm just going to kind of give you guys some of the cliff notes here. So the first impact that I can go over is the familial impact. One of the, thing that I hear most from the prisoners that I work with is them asking about their families or thinking about their families. Like whenever you are going to sympathize with a prisoner, if a prisoner has loved ones or people that they love the most on the outside, their first thought is always going to be, how is my loved one doing? What's going on? Are they okay? And I can't imagine how difficult this must be for them. So they're always, thinking about their family before they are themselves. And in their mind, the family has it worse, which, put yourself in their shoes. Imagine the person that you love most. Imagine your breadwinner, your brother, someone that you grew up with, whatever it might be, that this person is ripped out of your home overnight, taken away from you. They're not dead, but you can't reach them. You can't access them whenever you want, or how, the way that you used to. You can't just call them. It's an extremely traumatic situation that's happening. So the familial impact that you see, like the government, it's not just like taking away this one person and ruining one person's life. It's ruining the lives of an entire family. So you're talking about at least like 1 or 2, 3 other people that are an immediate family, maybe 6, 7, depending. Our families are usually really big. So it's many people who are impacted by this. And, a lot of children are also usually impacted. So imagine you have a child whose father or brother or sister is taken. That's extremely traumatic. So in my essay, I go over one particular case study, and I think, I think that you guys should read it, but it really talks about the way that this affects kids. So like, imagine trying to explain to a child that their father is not here and why they're not here. And this kid is just trying to understand like what's happening and why can't my dad come? And they have to live without their parent for however long. Or you have to explain to your child that their grandfather is, in prison and exists, but they can't meet this person. This is a person that they've never met. They were born, and they have to just hear stories about this, like, grandparent that they can't really have access to. So it's just it's an extremely devastating event that happens for families to take a prisoner and a loved one. And then, I would like to go into the social impact. So then we kind of go into the broader community and not just the family and how the family is impacted. So, I mean, imagine your loved one is taken for, the media is writing this whole story and this narrative that your family member is a terrorist and that they, did X, Y, Z, and that they're someone to be feared and that they're this public enemy. The community is going to be kind of scared to approach you. So a lot of times what you have is community members who just ostracize and completely neglect this family who went through an extremely traumatic thing. On the other hand, and I kind of delve into this in my essay, you even have community members who work against the family member. So imagine like you just went through one of the most traumatic things and you have people in the community testifying against you or supporting the government's case against you or against your loved one. And these are people that, you would have thought were your own people who would come to your support and aid. The way one family member typically puts it for me is, I don't even want support and help. I just don't want them to harm me. I don't want them to work against me. So that's like, another major impact that these cases, that the families have to deal with, that these cases have on their lives. Another extremely big one, the third one, is the economic impact. So imagine you're taken, overnight, that's it. Like, you're kidnapped from your home. If this is the breadwinner, this person is no longer available to provide for the family. The money is no longer there. The person loses their job. So you're talking about an economic impact that's actually just completely devastating to the whole family. Like this person, their job is no longer, they're not able to go and develop their career. Whatever gap there is, let's say they go away for 10 years, 15 years, that's an entire gap that they're not able to build wealth or whatnot. So you're looking at this completely devastating financial incident that's happening to the family. They have to pay for lawyers. Prison is expensive. The burden of just sending money to this loved one, to have these phone calls that are insanely expensive, or for them to just afford basic items from commissary. It's a lot of money. And these are things that we don't even have to think about. Who pays for phone calls? We have unlimited talk and text now, but these prisoners and these family members are still paying insane amounts of money just to talk to their loved ones. So the economic impact is another big thing to not underestimate. And then finally, which is also extremely devastating, is the health impact. I mean, imagine going through an extremely traumatic event and what that impact has on your health. So our communities are facing things like heart problems, chronic illnesses, chronic pain, all of the autoimmune diseases, things that come from these extremely traumatic events and from living under these extreme and enormous amounts of stress. That's not even to say, the impact, the health impact on the prisoners themselves when they're living under conditions that are, not clean, not sanitary, and not conducive for a healing or a healthy environment. So these are just some of this doesn't even really begin to scratch the surface of the way that these families are impacted. Like there's still so much more to dive into, but I don't want to, just keep taking too much of your time. Hopefully you guys can read the essay, but also the essay itself doesn't even get into everything that there is to know about these families. You know, but it's just kind of a picture or something that you can look to understand why CCF's work is really important and why we do what we do. It's, you know, my driving force is when I talk to the family members, I know that I have to keep doing this. Steve mentioned that we do our yearly in-person conference. That is, you know, that's the one place that the families come and they feel like they can connect with people who actually understand their experience. And that social form of support, a lot of them just say that they really just don't know where they would be without it, which I mean, I know the same is true for me. I don't know where I would be without those family members. We also do something, we have monthly meetings. So every month we meet up on Zoom, and we have that, you know, that social support just to kind of have it ongoing in between and not to wait for that one time a year that we can meet in person. And yeah, so I think that my hope is that we can kind of continue to support our family members at CCF and that you guys will help us keep this going. But yeah, that's everything from me. Thank you guys so much for having me. I don't know if there's going to be questions or if we're just moving on, but.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm going to quickly move on to the next two speakers, and then let's see, which one of you wants to go first? Oh, you're going to do it together? All right. So what I want to do is introduce Ayesha Hoda and Hani Massoud. And can you just introduce yourself in terms of what you're doing, what your job is? Because I'm not quite sure how much you want. Yeah, okay. Come on up.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm kind of short, so is this good? Is this good? Okay, perfect. Hi, everybody. My name is Ayesha Hoda. I'm new to Boston. I moved here last year to go to grad school, and I'm currently the academy leader at a new middle school that just got attached to Burke High School. It's a new middle school that was designed last year, and it's in Dorchester. I don't know if anyone's heard of the Jeremiah Burke in Dorchester. Yeah, so it's just become a 7 to 12, and I'm leading the 7th and 8th grade. Who went to school there? Really? Oh, wow. What a small world. Yeah. So that's where I am right now, but my story starts in New York. I'm actually from the Bronx. And so the story I'm going to tell you, which is connected to the story of the Newburgh Four, is actually a story of how I ended up in Boston. It's a story of how I met my husband. It's a story of how I met Steve and created this new family, including my 2 kids, Qasim and Amina. So in 2009, I was teaching middle school math in the Bronx. And one day I was having lunch with one of my students who was actually considering joining the Latin Kings, which is a common gang in the Bronx. And he was talking to me about how he's short and he needs protection. His dad's not in the picture. And I get a call. And I'm like, oh, I should not be answering my phone right now. But my grand aunt like calls me 3 times. And so I was like, oh, maybe it's an emergency. So I answer the phone, and my grand aunt, I call her Nikki Nani, is like, Ayesha, are you okay? Somebody blew up the Bronx. And I'm like, somebody blew up the Bronx? What are you talking about? She's like, yeah, it's all over the news. There were bombs. Are you safe? And I said, yeah, why would anyone want to blow up the Bronx out of all places? So I rushed, there's a TV in the teacher's lounge. So I rushed to the teacher's lounge, and sure enough, it's like all over the news. 4 African-American men from Newburgh, New York, planted bombs in Riverdale, which is funny enough, where Hani and I ended up settling and our kids were born. So we actually lived in that neighborhood of the Bronx. And so as soon as I watched more of the news, something didn't seem right. So when we got into the story, these 4 men, many of them had never left New York State. They had been in and out of prison for petty crimes like drug dealing, possession of weapon. But this all seemed very familiar to me. You know, after working in the Bronx, I started to see a lot of overlaps between these four men and the different issues that my students were dealing with, like feeling like they needed to sell drugs to be able to make a living. And it turns out there was an informant, Massoud, who was actually wanted for murder in Pakistan. And this is the same informant that actually entrapped Yassin Araf, who Steve Downs was just talking about. So he ended up coming into a very impoverished community, Newburgh, New York. It actually looks like a bomb was dropped on the city, and started circling his car around this mosque. And these four men had converted to Islam in prison. They were very loosely affiliated with the religion. But this guy would flash cars, new fancy cars, every single time he'd come to the mosque, buy these men food, offer them weed, offer them jobs, and started to befriend them and radicalize them. Eventually, he offered $250,000 for these men to plant bombs in a synagogue in Riverdale. And I think, Hani, are you ready for the clip? We're going to show you a quick clip of this documentary, The Newburgh Sting. It's the trailer. It tells the entire story of this case. And then I'll talk to you guys more about how we ended up a family out of this Newburgh 4 case.
Their plan is they're going to create 2 backpacks of bombs, and then they have 2 Stinger anti-aircraft missiles. Hussein was going to provide all the materials and the money, whatever they wanted.
Automatically, I knew this whole thing was manufactured.
This is a small city just soaking and drowning in poverty. Somebody offers you a large chunk of change, what do we got to do?
This operation was specifically designed to turn them into terrorists.
You read what you want to read. You believe what you want to believe. I know my child.
This is not a game. This is real life. How could you prey on your own American people?
Once you see something like that, you can't unsee it.
So I highly recommend watching that documentary. So a few weeks after this was all over the news, I get an email from WESPAC, which is Westchester Progressive Action Coalition. And I was born and raised in White Plains, where the trial actually was. So I get an email. I'm on the one activist group listserv that's in Westchester. And they said that the aunt of one of the Newburgh 4 is coming to speak about their side of the story. So I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So I bring my mother and I'm like, come with me to this event. And Steve was actually there. And the aunt, Ayesha McWilliams, who was like the only person at the time who felt comfortable enough to speak out, just told her story about how these were regular men who were just dealing with re-entry, trying to get a job. Her nephew, David McWilliams, really wanted to do right after he got out of prison, and he was trying to go back to school in Brooklyn. And then his 20, or I think maybe his brother was 19 at the time or younger, got diagnosed with cancer, and he wanted money for his cancer treatment. And so the lure of money, this lure of money really brought these guys into a situation that they really wanted no part in. And just hearing the stories of how they were bugged and they were giving kids toys and putting, speakers inside these toys, and how One of the men actually tried to run away from this informant and said, I want to have nothing to do with you. But then later he lost his job and then called the guy back because he needed some money. It just was so unjust. And then after Ayesha spoke, Steve got up and spoke, and Lynn Jackson from Project Salam got up and spoke and talked about other cases that were similar to this. And this was an awakening for me. I was like, wow, I can't believe that this is happening and nobody knows about it. So I approached Ayesha and I was like, look, this is a small place in White Plains. You need to get this out into New York City. And that was the birth of our friendship or our family. So Ayesha and I started meeting in Harlem. I was living in Harlem at the time, and we would meet in Dunkin' Donuts, and a friendship formed. We started this organization called Justice for the Newburgh Four. And we organized this event at NYU to try to get the word out in a larger setting. And so when we organized this event, and we were very like bootleg activists, I went to my art teacher, you know, I'm a public school teacher. I'm like, hey, can you help me make a flyer? Like, we didn't know what we were doing. But in the process, we got really close. Like, we would go out dance. Ayesha and I really became close friends. So in the process, right before our event in March, we kept getting phone calls from people. Oh, I heard about your event. This happened to my brother. Can I speak? Or I got another call. This happened to my father. My father's incarcerated, or my son's incarcerated. Can we speak? And we realized that, wow, this is really happening to so many more people than we realized. So this event occurred at NYU. I called Steve to come speak at it. And at the end of the event, it ended up being like 9 families. It went on 3 hours. And at the end of the event, Ayesha stood up and was like, we are one family now. And that was a very historic moment because it really was the first time that so many families were connected with this one common struggle. And that kind of led to CCF being formed. And so the day of the trial, June 14th, Hani Massoud, my husband, comes from Democracy Now!, my current husband, but he was not at the time. He came to cover the case because he heard about this NYU event. And we start arguing in front of the doors of the courthouse. He was like, oh, I thought you were a lawyer. You're just a teacher. And I was like, what do you mean I'm just a teacher? And so we started talking about education. And through this conversation, we started to talk about, look, we're both Muslim. Yes, it was really wrong that the government entrapped these 4 guys, but let's dig a little deeper. What would actually get someone to agree to do such a heinous crime? Yes, money, but there is something else there. And once we started exploring a little further, we kind of realized that the same type of people are being targeted. It's usually people who don't have a sense of like belonging or meaning and purpose. It's really young men who, some have mental health issues, but a lot of them are just really, they haven't found their place in the world. And so I started to see a lot of overlaps between my own students in the Bronx and these 4 men. And so we started talking about, like, how do we address the root cause of this problem? And so that was actually the birth of Justice by the Pen, originally called Jihad by the Pen, but we had to turn it to Justice by the Pen to bring it to public schools. And now Hani is going to play a little clip about this youth program that we started. And then I'll hand over the mic to him, because I know we might be out of time. Right? No? Okay.
All right, my name is Kevin McCoburn. I'm in 8th grade, and I live in the Bronx.
My name is Fatima Wage. I'm 14 years old, and I'm in 8th grade.
My name is Jonathan Valerio. I'm 12 years old.
My name is Fatima. I'm 13 years old.
I'm Edgar Gonzalez, age 12, a part of Justice by the Pen, and we've been working on a McDonald's campaign against animal cruelty.
My name is Ayesha Hoda, and I'm a former public school teacher and youth leadership coordinator. Seeing through firsthand experience the lack of civic engagement offered to our students so hungry for action and meaningful roles, I started a youth program called Justice by the Pen.
We protested because the animal abuse they used on the chickens and the cows. When we were out there protesting in front of McDonald's, it felt great because oftentimes we don't have a voice, and I felt like we had a voice that day.
So you can watch the rest of the video on YouTube. It's like 5 minutes. We don't want to take up more time. But basically, the gist of what we thought through was, as much as it is about these guys agreeing to do something that a lot of us wouldn't do, we need to kind of turn our lens to the US and think about what kind of social institutions failed these men. How did the education system fail them? How did the lack of like employment opportunities fail them? The healthcare system, where someone felt like they had to take money in these ways instead of being able to afford his brother's cancer treatment. So let's look inward at our own institutions in America instead of looking outward at this as like a larger war on terror. So now I'm going to bring up my husband to talk about his case. And I guess you can draw the connection, Hani. Sorry. Yeah, so that's us doing some of these youth workshops.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. Thank you for having us. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. Where did you leave off? So as she said, my name is Hani Massoud. I've been working for a radio TV show called Democracy Now! For, I think it's about 19 years now. And it's been an amazing experience. And, you get to cover terrible moments, but then you meet great people. And, your circle of your family gets bigger. And it's ironic that I was called to come cover this because I have personal experience with these cases as well. So I was raised in Houston, Texas, and I have friends that were entrapped. One of the names, actually a couple of the names are actually on there. There's Adnan Mirza, Kobe Williams, and Shiraz is there. And yeah, those are the three that are up there. And we were, I don't know how old I was back then, but I used to work as a producer, as an editor for the CBS affiliate in Houston. And on the side, we used to volunteer and do a bunch of charity work and community efforts to work with the homeless and people that are unhoused. And at some point, one of our members decided that he wanted to try to militarize us, that it wasn't enough having a soup kitchen every week, that it wasn't enough having a community radio show or a radio community TV show or a clothing drive or furniture drive. He thought maybe we should also consider training to go overseas to, to fight against the occupiers in Afghanistan or Iraq. None of us ever considered that, never thought about it. It just came from one of our members. And it was always strange that he would always, consider to destroy everything that we're working on so we can go overseas and, and shoot bullets. And we used to get in arguments. So at some point I found myself excluded from the group, and the group continued having these discussions. And later we found out, after the other 4 members were arrested and detained and charged and sentenced, that the guy that was trying to militarize us was an informant. So he became an informant at some point. We're not sure exactly when. Maybe he'll send me a message after seeing this and can tell me how and why he decided to become an informant. He did actually tell me, my wife did find him online, and he said that he was trying to help the community, but we think he got paid to do it because he was, from what I understand, always in need of money. And, the guys, they served 4 to 6 years. One of the guys just got out last year. He served 15 years. And if you can go through the slides real quick, this is our family with Alicia. You can keep going a little bit. I just wanted to show these other pictures here. So we have 5 kids. This is who our family is now, through CCF. But if we keep going a little bit here through the slides, a couple more here, I think. One more. These are our little outings right here. This is our eldest. He's a 22-year-old that plays basketball at Kansas State on scholarship. And then if you go one more slide, this is our 20-year-old that plays football in college. And then one more slide. Here's our 17-year-old that's a musician, plays violin, and he's also into theater. And then one more slide here, I think. This is the two that are here, Qasim and Amina. So to think, you know, as Steve mentioned, and as we're talking about family, to think that, you know, that I could have lost 15 years and not been present for these moments, you know, just to personalize it. You know, obviously it's not about me, and these guys, they bravely and courageously got through their sentencing, and a lot of them are still, you know, in prison for life, as we know some of these cases. They think that none of these moments, including these two, you know, possibly not even existing. You know, I don't know. I was tearing up listening to Steve. You know, I was tearing up. You know, and I look over at these names, and it's really hard to look at them sometimes. To think how easily I could have been one of these people. You know, I could have easily been one of these guys that could have been just rounded up. And it really was a subjective thing. I mean, are the agents in these particular cases noble? Are they really convicted on their ethical approach towards looking for terrorists? You know, how, you know, we know cases where people built their career, you know, like Chris Christie did with the Dukas and the cases dubbed the Fort Dix case, where they faced 80 years to life, or what did they faced life, they got life. And they themselves, you know, recorded one of their outings in the Poconos where they did paintball, and I think they had target practice at a legal firing range where they had legal weapons. They recorded their skiing trip. They sent that video, took it to Circuit City to make copies of it. The employee at Circuit City called the FBI and said, "You need to take a look at this." They sent an informant to try to entrap them. The informant was clearly crazy and not from the community, so they themselves called the FBI on the informant, if I remember that part correctly. So the FBI removed the informant and brought in another informant. And they're hell-bent on building a case. And, you know, Chris Christie was the prosecutor in the case. So once he had what he needed, you know, you can present this case in front of any jury in the United States, and you put a brown person with a beard with a Muslim-sounding name. It's you know, just like in the 60s and 70s during COINTELPRO, it was a closed case. So, you know, again, to think that I wasn't rounded up and I wasn't part of the guys. We talked to Adnan earlier today, and I asked him, you know, one of the guys from the Houston case that I was a part of, and I asked him, you know, why do you think I didn't get rounded up? And he said, only God knows, you know, only God knows. You know, I know they spoke highly of me. I know the agent and the informant, they all knew I had zero inclination to do anything violent, that my weapon of choice was always the camera, you know, and I used to always joke with the informant that if I was going to shoot anything, it was going to be through a lens. You know, this is the weapon of mass destruction that I choose to use, you know, and the thing that I wanted to destroy is, you know, is the lies and of the polarization that happens from, you know, a one-sided media. I thought I was going to be a little bit more cheery up here. I don't know why I got caught off guard not being as cheery as I thought I'd be speaking. But, you know, if we flip through the slides a little bit more, you know, you'll see here after this picture of the two little ones, you know, us enjoying our moments that, you know, we were able to do like any other family, just, you know, these nice solemn moments. But if you keep going, you know, speaking of family, you know, another picture here after this one, maybe. Here I am with Amy out in the field. I don't know if you guys know the show Democracy Now! So Amy Goodman is the host. This is us in Occupy Wall Street. One more slide here. So I've had a chance to travel and cover and be a part of all these amazing movements on the smallest scale possible, which is to be a conduit to help magnify the voices on the ground. But if you go one more slide here, you know, here's Lynn that Steve spoke about, and Kathy and Alicia. And I forget the gentleman's name in the middle. What's his name, Steve? Anyways, these folks now, you know, speaking of family, like who are who becomes your family? You know, I know as a Muslim, you know, we used to always say at the mosque that, you know, our spiritual connection is thicker than blood. You know, our spiritual I think we probably say it in every places of, of worship and of ideology in general. But there's a moment that I remember during the beginning of CCF where I don't remember the gentleman's name. I can't tell you the date, but I know what he said. I came to the event and I was just so amazed at all these white folks that are gathering to work on behalf of Muslims. And I was just, taken aback, not because I haven't seen it before, because if you go to any popular movement, you'll always find people of all backgrounds, all denominations, all genders, working on behalf of, greater humanity. And I told him, I said, look, just thank you guys for what you guys are doing on behalf of the Muslim community. And he looked at me and said, this is not just for the Muslim community. I mean, clearly, this is for all of us, And it takes me to another moment, which I also can't remember where it was, but I know I was either in Denmark, Poland, or Germany. And this was after one of the climate conferences. And there was a convention of rabbis. And one rabbi, and there was some back and forth between the rabbis because they all had different political views. And they were arguing about the occupation in Palestine. And one of the rabbis stood up and he said, look, I lost family in the Holocaust. And he said, after the Holocaust, there was two kinds of Jews that rose up. One kind said, this will never happen to us again. And they meant that they would do anything to not let this happen to Jews again. And those are the ones that are currently, from his perspective, that make up of the Zionist sect that kind of run the political scheme to occupy Palestine. He said the other Jew that rose up was the one that said that we'll never let this happen to anyone ever again. And, again, working for a place like Democracy Now!, you can flip one more slide if you don't mind. I've seen this all over, and we've all seen it. If you've been part of any movement, or if you clearly come to a church like this, you've seen it probably every single Sunday. I was telling Steve on the way here today, how do we make a mosque like this? Like I want to find a mosque that I can go to that's like this church. Not that I won't be coming here. Yeah, but this is my dad with Steve. A few months ago, maybe. We've stayed at Steve's house a few times now, and my dad used to always get on my case on who are these people that you're connecting with. And my dad's always been a straight edge guy, worked for the IRS for 40 years until he retired, and always, I don't know what the statement is, you cross your T's and dot your I's and pay taxes on every dime that comes your way. And when he met Steve, he finally understood. He really understood how something like this could be possible, that how could people be entrapped? And also, how could people devote their lives to it? How could there possibly be a person like Steve out there in the world that would devote their time and energy and resources to something like this? I think there's one more slide. And, just to wrap it up, I mean, basically here are my kids. They've been raised, Cosmo and Mina, the youngest especially. This is what they've seen every year for their last 7 years. This is the family conference, I think, maybe just before COVID. This might have been the last one before COVID. Yeah. So our family these are all impacted families. These are the volunteers. These are the organizers. These are, just some of the most beautiful people that I've ever met. And really, we can call on each other for anything without any necessary chit chat or, small talk. We can just get right into what we might need from each other. And it's been an amazing experience. And I feel really blessed to just even be a part of it in any small way. So thank you guys for coming, and thank you guys for the opportunity to be able to speak and to be a part of this beautiful gathering. So thank you guys.
This is so beautiful, and thank you, Ayesha and Hani, for adding on, embellishing what was already just a beautiful celebration of family, and that's the operative word this morning. And I say to you all, maybe you don't need a lawyer, maybe you don't need a church either. What you need is a family and brotherhood, sisterhood, siblinghood, all of those things. Hey, I wanted to ask Amar to just spotlight my camera so that we could, I hope I pushed the right button here. No, don't join the audio. I don't need any audio. I just want to walk around and show people these, all of this beautiful visuals that Steve brought. The first is signs. We recognize some of the names, like the Holy Land Foundation 5, and like Lynn Stewart, who received our Sacquin Vanzetti Award in what year? Like 2008 or 7. And so I'm just going to walk around to show you. Do I have to turn this around like that? Please also mention that these donate less than probably a third of the number of cases we're actually following. Finally, I want to have you all have a look at this beautiful banner behind us. Think about a farmer in upstate New York who did this beautiful work. There you have it. And we have a couple of things to do before we go on. I was supposed to have a collection plate here, but I didn't bring it. And I just want to tell you out there that we rely on your support to make this thing called Community Church happen. You can go to our website, communitychurchofboston.org, and there is a credit card as well as a PayPal function there that you can help us keep this thing rolling. I also wanted to say that there are some books back there from the CCF, Coalition for Civil Freedoms, and we are so glad to have connected with this organization, and we hope that we will become a part of that family as well. Very much so. It's just this Holy Land Foundation Association just has opened many doors for us, including a door to Ayesha and Hani and these two beautiful kids who are with us this morning. It's just so great to have you here and to hear about the work you are doing in this regard. Brings up so many thoughts and feelings, but first I want to just close with a song and then we'll have a Q&A. Okay. Sorry about that. That was. Mr. Hani, audiovisual producer, pointing out some of our faults in that regard, but we do the best we can, and we will figure out how to do this hybrid thing with grace, elegance, and style. I have a song, but first I want to take this hat off, put on this hat. It's a new product. This is made by Maribel Caballero, and it's blank hats that I bring, and she embroiders BDS on them, and that's boycott, divest, and sanction. I just did 4 of them, and I'm going to send one to Miko Peled as a gift to Miko. But I'm going to put this hat on to sing this song, which is written by Iman Askar. Iman Askar is a young woman. She looks to be about 14, but she's actually in her early 20s and has a couple of kids. And she calls herself a content provider on all those, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff. And it's really mostly really funny little clips that she does in both Arabic and English. And this is one she did that really hit it out of the park, if you ask me. And it's called The Story of Palestine. And it's a sea shanty about Palestine. There once was a land called Palestine where Christians, Muslims, Jews lived fine. In the 1800s, it was ruled by the Ottoman Empire. Meanwhile, a bearded guy founded Zionism for Jews to aspire, a land that becomes their home and safe only for their kind. Then there was World War I that ended when the Allies won, and England was like, hey, this beautiful land is totally mine. Still, the name was Palestine, even though it was colonized, and a promise for a Zionist state was made by a man that had no right. Then more and more Jews arrived seeking refuge, and that's all right until their plan to steal the land was no longer to hide. The year was 1948 when Israel bullied its way into a state, and thousands of Palestinians fled their homes to survive. No right for return, no right for a home, no right to fight for the land they owned. Israel expanded more and more into an apartheid. Where is your humanity? Where is your respect for dignity? Call it conflict, that's insanity. It's time to change your mind. One day Palestine will be free, so be on the right side of history. You're not anti-Semitic if you stand against war crimes. Don't be brainwashed by the news. Now you can see for yourself their truth. Learn about the story of Palestine. Bim boom boom bim boom boom bim 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 boom boom. Learn about the story of Palestine. Oh. So Q&A. Amar is going to lead us through the Zoom part of the Q&A, but I want to start with a question for any of you. We're just getting going on this effort to be part of Free the Holy Land Foundation 5. We have a petition out back, and we hope all of you who are here physically will sign the petition. And we've written letters, and just I'm brainstorming with Nida and others. How can we do more? And what is the next step? Miko was very negative about the possibilities. All the legal recourses are exhausted, and basically the only thing that can get them out is a presidential pardon. And I'm thinking maybe lawyers and clergy can't do that, but family somehow can, if we believe. And I started to think about mosques and the Muslim American community, and if there has been any united effort on their part to become, the front of that effort. And I was thinking about getting a hold of whoever the leader is of that big mosque right by Roxbury Crossing. Also, there's a big, beautiful mosque in Wayland on what's that called? Route 12, old. Yeah, Weston, Wayland. And I've actually been in touch with the imam there, and just wondering. I also wanted to let you all know that we have a group that kind of went dormant during COVID and is wanting to come back, and they're called Muslims for Progressive Values. And they met here like once a month for several years. And we're hoping to get that started in this very room. So is that in the form of a question that any of you could address? Do you think there's do you think there's fear that is a factor among the Muslim community?
I think that there is a lot of pressure on big Muslim establishments, the mosque, the leaders, and so on, from the US government. They have a program countering violent extremism that basically government is willing to pay a lot of money to the mosques to give them access, and they kind of oversee that and will go in and have agents in the mosques to kind of monitor it. It's completely inappropriate. It violates the First Amendment in my view. But I do think that a lot of them are very much in a difficult position. I've talked to a number of imams who just say, look, you can't argue with the FBI. We just want to be left alone, but it's really hard to do that. The Palestine is such a politically fraught situation that the government, the US government, will automatically be involved in it. And I think it will just make it very difficult right now to get any leverage. So I kind of agree with Miko. I just don't see where the leverage is. I would have thought that we would have had leverage to do something about preemptive prosecutions. But again, it's just that Congress is so divided that I really don't see much hope for it right now.
No, I mean, I definitely feel like there's a lot of fear in the Muslim community. I can speak to my own father. Like, he did not want me involved in any of this stuff because there's ways that since 9/11, just being associated at all with Palestine or terrorism can affect your life. And he actually lost his business because that was used against him. So there is a lot of fear. And rightfully so.
Yeah. I was just going to add that, sometimes, I mean, from congregation to congregation, it could be different, but just getting folks involved in any social justice effort in the first place is sometimes challenging. You can get them out for a basketball tournament or a concert or, something that's benign in the sense that it's just entertainment. But when it comes to some type of call to action, it's challenging just off the bat, no matter what the topic is. So I think one of the things we try to do, especially with the young people, is just to get them active on any issue that they cared about first. Then you can start to see the connections. So we, whether it was, in climate, working for climate justice, for example, was something that could bring everybody together on something that they can understand and feel directly, impacted by. And then from there, you can take it to everything else, from immigration to being a climate refugee to mass incarceration to whatever. So just to sum it up, yeah, I mean, it's a complicated thing in the first place, just to get people to be active for anything. But there is a thread, and I know we're all working on it in different ways.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for that. And I still, before the event, I had that thought, we should call the Muslim Society that's in Roxbury Crossing, the beautiful facility. I've never been in there, and I'd love to walk around and meet the leaders. And yeah, love that. Love that. Yeah, yeah. And this Muslims for Progressive Values, I would describe them as very highly educated, up and coming professionals who mostly their issue that cannot find purchase in the mosques is about LGBT folks that are not accepted there, just like evangelical churches or every other major religion has that streak in it, so Amar, do we have anybody on the Zoom who would like to join us?
No, not yet. No one's has their hand raised or anything.
Okay, well, I want to go to my next thought, which is there anybody here who's an FBI agent by any chance? How about on the Zoom? Will you raise your hand? Will you put up your little hand? They're probably watching, and we sort of have to assume that everything we do has that eye and ear there. Just by way of history, Community Church of Boston in the 50s was infiltrated by the FBI, and we were targeted by the House Un-American Activities Committee, and there was a local state house version of the HUAC that brought in a number of members of the congregation and questioned them, are you now or have you ever been blah, blah, blah. And the minister of the church, after whom this auditorium is named, Donald Lothrop, organized to deliver an address to the joint session of the legislature, and gave a fiery lecture address, which we have published. I think it's available on our website, but it was basically a have you no shame address, and it was really a remarkable historic address. And a few weeks later, the committee was disbanded. And another thing would be really interesting that I think Charlie, who is our tech guru who's online, suggested that we get a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request for our entire FBI file, all 103 years worth. It would be a very interesting document. And I don't know how you go about doing that. Some lawyers might be able to help us with that. But that's a project that would be really quite enlightening, I believe, and it would put some interesting light on our already very rich and disorganized history, which is in the form of archives that are on the 5th floor that we're just starting to try and decipher and put together and make available to the members and public and scholars and whatnot. Steve.
I just wanted to respond to that because at one point it was suggested to me that maybe I should look for my file with the FBI. So apparently they had a website where you could go and they would provide you with the form that was necessary. All you had to do was supply your name and address, and then they would go and then they would give it back. So I went in, I filled it out, I put my name, Steve Downs, I put my address, 26 Dinmore Road, and put it all in there. And I sent it off to them, and I waited months. And finally, I got a letter back from them. And they said, I'm sorry, Mr. Downs, Steve Downs, we cannot comply with your request. You did not provide your name and address. And that came in a letter addressed to Steve Downs at 26 Dinmore Road. So I got the feeling this was a big middle finger, if you know what I mean. So anyway, I give that to you for what it's worth.
Any other questions, observations, unquietnesses, as they say in Spanish, inquietudes? Dick, it's so good to see you here. Yeah, Dick Crowley, long time member of Community Church.
I just wanted to ask a question that came to mind with respect to this overall presentation is what your observations are about conditions in prisons right now. Both the federal and state. I don't know, a lot of the people that you have had contact with are in federal institutions. Whether their conditions are status quo or getting worse or whatnot.
Yeah, the conditions in the federal prison particularly for these cases, the cases that we're involved with, are they created a special Muslim prison in the Midwest. There's 2 of them now, called these communication management units, which severely restrict their ability to communicate with the outside world. And I've been to both of them. They're both very, very tight, very locked down. It's very hard for them to keep in contact with their loved ones because they're limited to so few hours and so little mail that you can get to them. Sometimes they're transferred to other places like Florence, maximum security. But again, that's almost entirely solitary confinement. What I noticed over the time, there was an effort to reform both federal, I think, and state prisons by making efforts to eliminate solitary confinement as a way, because that was very detrimental. So what I see the prisons are doing now is they're simply saying, all right, we don't do solitary anymore. We just have lockdowns. And in lockdowns, everybody goes into solitary confinement. I mean, the whole prison is in solitary confinement, and they can stay that way for months. So from that point of view, yeah, it's really bad. It's gotten worse, I would say, because now everybody's involved, not just some people in solitary confinement for disciplinary reasons. We had a case recently where some guy got COVID and was sort of dying of COVID in the prison, and they had a lockdown because of COVID. And so he just died alone in his cell without anybody coming to his rescue. And when people protested, they got thrown into solitary confinement. I mean, you can't win in these situations. We have found consistently that the prisons try to block both state and federal attempts to monitor them or to impose humane conditions, so that the prisoners there are pretty much at the whim of what the guards want to do. And these guards, as we know, like police officers, are not all humanitarians.
I'll say this actually, one of those CMUs, those prisons where they can control management of it. We know a guy that was locked up there as an eco-terrorist, a white kid from Long Island. His name is Andy Stepanian. Andy Stepanian, yeah. An eco-terrorist. He was an environmentalist, and I'm going to get the story wrong, but I know that they, I don't know if he was a part of this effort or not. I shouldn't say what they did, actually. I don't know what they did exactly, just factually, I have an idea. But, they were concerned by these facilities that would test products on animals like beagles. Beagles, is that the name of the dog? These nice docile dogs, and they would test these products on them until basically to see how long it would take to kill them. So he was convicted as an eco-terrorist. Again, the prosecutor in the case was Chris Christie. They released the beagles. I don't want to say what they did because I don't know what they did exactly, but he was locked up in one of these facilities and he was the only non-Muslim. And the guards used to refer to him as the balancer. And the reason they put him in that facility, just so they could avoid any civil rights violations. And they could say, oh, this isn't a prison for Muslims. We got this eco-terrorist here. But yeah, the conditions, yeah, Steve spoke to it perfectly.
Dick Crowley has a beautiful ending line from Bob Dylan. Will you tell us again, Dick?
Bob Dylan said when he was quite a bit younger, he's approaching 80 or 80, I think he is 80 years old. But he said when he's quite a bit younger and more radical, he said, some of us are prisoners and the rest of us are guards. Sometimes I think the whole world is a prison yard. Some of us are prisoners, the rest of us are guards.
Thanks, Dick. It's so great to see you here. And Barbara, Dick's sister as well. And everybody, Ayesha and Hani. And hey, you two kids, tell us your names again.
Amina. Kasim.
Kasam. All right. Great to see you all here. Don't forget to sign. Those of you physically here, please join us for a beautiful lunch that Luis Guzman has prepared for us. And on that note, we will say we have new family. And want to tell you that I saw one name there that's one of the Holy Land Five who will join us in I believe it's April 30th. I'm not remembering the date, but his name is Abdul Rahman Odeh. And he was going to be with us in December, but he got sick. And we still have a plane ticket that's good for a year. So we've said Abdul is definitely going to join us and be part of one of our Sundays upcoming. Abdul is one of the two that have been released. He's on a serious parole on a very short leash with a what's it called, a bracelet on his ankle. And the other one, whose name is Mohammed, also was deported to Turkey, as was Sami Al-Arian. So we look forward to that as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Can I make a short announcement?
There's someone who has an announcement. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Zoom changed their platform and I don't know what I'm doing. This is Mary Lynn. I just wanted to let people know, if they don't already know, that there's a concert for Gaza at the UU Church in Harvard Square at 2 o'clock today. And there'll be a lot of like-minded people there. We have a very vibrant BDS and pro-Palestine rights movement in that area.
Mary Lynn, thank you for reminding us of that. The organizers are the Gaza Mental Health Foundation, who are our wonderful allies and friends. Nancy Murray is the leader there. We just really appreciate her work and her witness. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all of you who are on Zoom. And I'd like to, usually when I'm near the computer, I like to call out your names and say greetings to each one of you individually, but I'm too far away and can't do that. So we will invite you to come back next week. We have a really interesting program again. His name is Radi Roldan Figueroa, and he is a professor of theology at Boston University. And he has been very interested in Community Church's sanctuary program that happened during the 80s, when we housed a Guatemalan man who was being sought out by the military in Guatemala. And he sought refuge here and lived with us for 2 years on the 3rd floor. And before he finally got his documents to go to Canada, where he lived out his life, and he passed away recently. And Radi Roldan is tracing the connections between the sanctuary movement in the 80s, which was fleeing political persecution in Central America. And there were many churches and communities that participated, and the sanctuary movement of now, which is people who are chased by immigration for deportation and are put in sanctuary are housed in sanctuary in various churches and communities. Especially was true during the Trump administration, when ICE had its agents on the stair steps of courthouses and anywhere else where they might nab anybody who fit a certain profile to ask them for their documents and grab them and send them away if they were not correctly documented. So that'll be a very interesting program next Sunday. Yeah, it's good to forget about that period in our history and remember that it could happen again just like that. Thanks, everybody. Let's go have some lunch and let's enjoy these two kids who have joined us today, and celebrate our family, and invite you to come down and see our sanctuary. That's our auditorium that's filled with tchotchkes and books and crafts and coffee and all kinds of stuff here for you to enjoy and participate and become a member, become a part of steering the future of this place, become a part of helping us figure out how to make this a state-of-the-art model of energy efficiency for the city of Boston for similar buildings, helping us figure out our foreign policy. Here we are, our own Vatican, right here in Copley Square. So join us on a Sunday or join us on a Zoom. Join us on Wednesday, the 22nd, for the documentary about the Holy Land Foundation 5. We have concerts, virtual concerts and physical concerts coming up in late March into April and May. So all kinds of stuff. We got a new newsletter coming out very soon, and we'd be glad to get that information to you. Join us on our email list or on our physical mail list that goes out through the U.S. Postal Service. And I'm done. Thanks, everybody.
Wonderful.